For retail, it is a really joined up experience. Prior to loyalty kind of launching, we did a huge project internally to kind of really align our consent. So making sure that, prior to this, our store staff were blind to whether a customer was signed up to newsletters or to SMS. So we really did, like you say, kind of go back to that foundation of what kind of needs to be visible to the store staff.
You're listening to Inside Commerce, a weekly e-com strategy, technology and CX focused podcast hosted by experienced digital consultants and re-platform specialists James Gedd and Paul Rogers. Get insights into e-com strategy of leading brands, hear from industry thought leaders and leading tech vendors with practical advice to help you improve your online CX.
Hello and welcome back to the Inside Commerce podcast. It's just me today as James has got commitments with his clients. But I'm joined again by Ed, founder of Limesharp, and Hannah Bennett, head of digital from Paul Smith. Both of you have been on the podcast before. Do you maybe want to start by giving us a bit of a kind of introduction to yourself, your role, your background, maybe starting with you, Hannah?
Yeah, sure. Hi. So Hannah Bennett, head of digital at Paul Smith. I've been here, it's probably 16 years now, probably up to a year since we last spoke. So oversee our digital growth really. We've got some aggressive plans now for the next 3 years that we're working on. Part of that being loyalty. So yeah, I'm excited to speak how I got there.
Lovely. And then Ed.
Cool, yeah. Hi, my name's Ed. I'm the owner at Limesharp. We're a digital commerce agency, so working with amazing brands like Paul Smith, which we're to talk about today. Overall services include kind of design, technology, and strategical services. And obviously this podcast is about kind of loyalty and how we can support the brand with their programs. So yeah, I'm really excited to be on the podcast and thanks for having us, Paul.
Great. I think this is your third time on the podcast, isn't it? So the Inside Commerce veteran. Perfect. So I invited you both on to talk about the kind of release of the Paul Smith loyalty program. I was fortunate enough. So you guys invited me into a few of the sessions, through the kind of, early stages of the program. And then as you got closer to launch, so I've seen lots of, the kind of developments and kind of seen how the program evolved from some of those early sessions. So I thought it'd be good to kind of go through some of that together. So maybe starting with you, Hannah. So the first question, can you just talk us through some of the goals behind the project? And then also, before we started recording, you talked a little bit around kind of, you've been wanting to do this for 5+ years and you've kind of struggled with internal challenges and getting different stakeholders on board. So can you talk us through that kind of journey and those overarching goals?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, loyalty has been a hot topic and a frustrating topic at Paul Smith for, like you say, 5+ years. We have gone through so many iterations of what it could and should be. Like, should it be more covert? We're doing it behind the scenes. Do we want it to be quite loud and brash? But how does that kind of resonate with the kind of premium brands? So we've gone from hiring internally to try and solve that problem. And it was never taking off really, to a point where we boiled it down to, I think it was 4 stakeholders in the end. So digital, retail, brand marketing, and financial planning. So there's kind of 4 big groups there that you're trying to keep happy that don't naturally always align, which is when kind of Ed and kind of kindly came in of how can you really kind of bang our heads together of what are we really trying to get out of this program? What's the purpose of it? How can it be designed so intuitively to the brand that it feels authentic? That's something that's really important to Paul and the brand side of things. And yeah, luckily if you've been to paulsmith.com, you can see that now. So I think like challenge wise, it's our retail customer shops and behaves very differently to our online customer. And it's often really hard with loyalty, I find, to kind of do things on the masses that feel really special. Whereas in stores for years, we've been doing great VIP servicing, like talks with Paul through the collections that are upcoming, early access to buy, which is then really harder to translate for online customers. So that was kind of the big challenge that we were trying to solve initially, but it feeling authentic and feeling different. Paul is still here. He's still involved in the company. We're 55 years old now. It needs to feel something like he would have done back in his shop all those years ago. So I think that was really nice to kind of get, luckily we've been working with Limesharp for like 5 years plus now, right? They're good at knowing us internally, but also challenging our thinking. So yeah, I think that was kind of where we started, and amazing the speed that we then kind of reached once that kind of stakeholder alignment sessions that Ed's team ran were fantastic.
Great. And I guess obviously working with you guys on the paid side, like I've seen firsthand, like Poolsmith there's probably a lot more to Poolsmith than the average person thinks, where you've got so many different customers, so many different price points, and it's kind of like a department store in that, you've got such a breadth of products. So that obviously could lean quite nicely into the loyalty side, but it does make it a bit more complex. And then Ed, so I think the second session that I joined was when you and your team kind of presented 3 different routes for the loyalty program. So from a kind of creative direction perspective, but also the kind of the kind of logistics behind the program. Can you talk through kind of some of the research and some of the thinking behind those, kind of given some of those bits that I just pointed out, and how you went about kind of building those concepts?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the points that maybe Hannah didn't mention was, the brand is, as she did say, incredible at rewarding those customers that have been sort of long-term Poolsmith fans, coming into the store, with Paul doing some really nice, unique things for them. But I think a big challenge that we're all kind of trying to solve was acquiring customers during promotions and sale times and getting them to convert to their second and third order, which I guess, Paul, you probably see from your side, working in the sort of paid space, quite a frequent challenge. Investing really heavily into social and paid traffic to get the first sale, but then how do you engage that customer to go out and purchase more? So I think Poolsmith probably could have gone and continued with a really covert program with the VIP tier and taken it into that kind of next stage, but it felt like there was a really kind of big opportunity to not lose sight of that amazing experience those customers were getting, but bring something in for those customers that are purchasing a gift or not aware of that kind of breadth of product you were just talking about, Paul. I think prior to the creative sessions, we did those kind of stakeholder alignment sessions where we actually just presented back what a lot of the kind of market was doing in terms of points, tiers and services, and it was actually quite eye-opening of the different breadth of brands that were taking very unique approaches to loyalty, especially around kind of service only type programs. And I think initially when we first started discussing the program, Hannah, we were pretty focused on just having a tier-based solution. So there was no kind of thinking of any kind of points or currency earn and burn type program based on Poolsmith being a sort of premium brand. We didn't think that kind of aligned with the overall sort of vision. So that actually came sort of much later during the sort of creative concepts, really. So I think we kind of defined the overall program mechanics at quite an early point, specifically around tiers, how to structure them, and obviously we're kind of working with yourself on that one, Paul. And then the creative team sort of took that away. And like we, similarly to how we work with sort of redesign projects, we always kind of create 2 to 3 different types of concepts. That's really just to, take the handbrake off on overall kind of creative thinking and really try and do something quite sort of unique and special. I think taking that approach was really successful for this type of project. So they went back and we actually brought on another designer in the team who hadn't worked on Poolsmith. So we were doing a big redesign project at exactly the same time as doing this loyalty project. So we had designers that were like fully immersed in the brand that have been working with Poolsmith for years. We decided to bring on another designer, Faye, into that kind of creative process to support Leslie, our creative director. And re-immersed her. So took her down to the stores, to the flagships, had a really good opportunity to go into Paul's office in Covent Garden, where he still works today on occasion, which was a huge inspiration for the program. But I think that gave the design team a lot of kind of inspiration to go away and create these different 3 concepts. I think it was quite safe to say we had 2 super strong ones. Maybe the third route didn't kind of shine a light on what was kind of the routes for option 1 and 2. But I think the first route in Collectors Club, which is the one that was live, was so strong. I think everyone in the kind of stakeholders in that room, like, let's just
Job Bennett. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that overall kind of brand immersion, the same sort of process as we would do for a redesign or a design project was really valuable in that sense.
What do Mattel, Victoria Beckham, Sennheiser, and Glossier all have in common? They power their businesses with Shopify. Shopify is the most innovative and scaled commerce platform on the planet. It also happens to have the best converting checkout on the planet. Shopify, powering the future of enterprise commerce. Find out more at shopify.com/enterprise.
I don't know if, hopefully we're allowed to say this, but I can't remember what the third concept was. I remember the first one was obviously the Collectors Club, and the focus was on the stamps, which was my favorite, and I think a lot of people's in the room's favorite. Second one was super strong. So that was the locations and like the stores and the cities, like big geographic play. What was the third one?
The third one was almost like a behind the scenes family one.
Yeah.
So being like part of the kind of Portsmouth family. And there was some really nice kind of art direction in there, but I think probably the strength of, Route 1 and 2 was probably what made that one feel slightly weaker. Yeah. But it's always good to help everyone decide.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've kind of already done this a little bit already, but I guess just for people that are listening that aren't able to go and check out like the landing page of the site, and can maybe one of you, maybe start with you, Hannah, just give us a bit of an overview of the program and talk through some of the kind of key incentives and maybe the rationale around those a little bit.
Yeah, so it is a tier, and I'm going to say points once, but we call points stamps. So it's tier and stamp based program. So what we were finding for online customers, obviously discount is important. So how could that still play an elevated part of the program? So it's a redeemable stamps is part of the program. So you kind of earn stamps on your purchases, and then you can redeem them against future purchases. Your spend then puts you into a tier to get you access to benefits. And then this is where we really had to keep refining and keep kind of sense checking where we want to be as a brand versus how we operate as a brand. So that point you made earlier about us being a department store, we do get customers that would just happily just buy socks with us all the time. And that spend is very different to that customer that just comes straight in and buys a suit. So really trying to get those different tiers pitched correctly for us was a real challenge of then what are the benefits and rewards that really are important to those customers. So we did have to play around with those tiers. Sorry, the lights have just come off in the room. So getting those tiers right to suit the customer that just comes in and buys a suit and then kind of goes on to buying kind of other parts of their outfitting versus that gifting or low purchase customer is quite difficult for us. And trying to keep ourselves as a premium brand and not letting this kind of sink us into giving too much away too soon. So we did end up adjusting those tiers as we were kind of refining the program closer to launch from 5 tiers down to 4. And kind of really keeping those good benefits at the second tier, which starts from £500, and allowing that kind of points and that kind of effectively kind of cash back on your next spend for those newcomers, where we actually do need to do a bit more hard work on them, educating them on the brand and the different product groups that we offer.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Ed.
I just think the really nice thing about the program is how kind of targeted it is to specific sort of customer groups or specific types of customers. That obviously the tier system is like superb at rewarding like the hardcore spenders, the people that are shopping with the brand on a frequent basis and trying to get the original objectives of, getting customers from their first and second purchase, through those tiers. But there's also some really nice other elements with like gamification, which I never really kind of thought would be sort of right for Portsmouth. But as we were exploring this kind of, like the creative concepts, it made a lot of sense, due to a lot of the kind of inspiration directly from Paul. He's a massive sort of collector as an individual, and you go into his office and there's like, objects that are sent in from from customers, like stuff that he's collected during his travels. Absolutely loves Japan. So the kind of third sort of element of this sort of stamp collecting idea came as part of those creative concepts, but as well as the sort of feeling like, I don't know, really easy to understand for a customer because they're so used to collecting stamps from coffee shop type programs. It also gave Paul Smith a lot of opportunity to get like really creative and unique with the program. That I think that's the extra layer that takes it from feeling like a standard loyalty program to something like really bespoke for Paul Smith. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more on the on those special edition stamps that kind of like adds that in. So
yeah, definitely. I think it was probably my favorite meeting I've been in at Paul Smith was during that concept call with everyone, talking about those 4 kind of stakeholders of trying to convince them. We were all like collaborating on ideas. So customers can just build their digital stamp book as part of the program as an additional like gamification layer, as Ed said. And the ideas going around the room that day were so exciting. And I think still now people are kind of coming up with new ideas where a customer can build their own collection of stamps digitally. So whether that's visiting our stores, so all our stores have one of the stamped objects that has been sent to Paul over the years in there, where a Paul customer can get their Floral Street stamp or their Melrose stamp, as well as buying into product groups. So if you buy Stripe, you can get your Stripe stamp. If you've lucky enough to get a barber on our recent collaboration, you can get the barber stamp. Going to listening to our Spotify playlist. And it's been really nice to just watch customers then after all these ideas and how they're kind of engaging with that side of things.
Yes, as you said earlier, I think it's such a good foundation as well. Like you're like, even just for the retail side, like your stores are like insane, like definitely the best kind of experience amongst our clients. And I think there's so much you can do with the stamps and so much you can do to like bring that into the store experience as well. So every time James isn't here to keep me organized, I always end up adding in random questions. And Hannah, I've added one for you, which hopefully you won't mind me kind of asking you on the fly. But one of the things in fact, probably the biggest thing that impressed me about the rollout and implementation of this program is how quickly you handled all the internal kind of deliverables and workload, because it's such a broad program and there's so much content and so many emails and everything that need to be built. And can you just talk us through kind of how you approached getting all of that work done and kind of managing that internally?
Yeah, luckily we've got a really strong project team internally. And what's nice is that we can divide the project between the different departments. I think this has been one of the real true projects where everyone's BAU changes like pre and post loyalty. So breaking that up into the different stakeholders then within the teams. So whether that's digital marketing and then CRM within that, whether that's retail and retail training, whether that's the POS system and how that's integrated. So really getting everyone on board early to kind of hear the scale of the project, how they play a part, layering in then in a proper kind of agile methodology where they're meeting every week to give updates, problems, status updates. So a true kind of divide and conquer to kind of hit that go live. So, we have Limesharp as well to support on the front end build. So I think for those core central people, it was a lot, but then once you've kind of divided that work out, they've kind of, okay, yeah, I've got to get a stamped object in every store with a training guide. Retail ran an extensive training program throughout the weeks and became those kind of collector club ambassadors across the different retail network to educate them. So yeah, it was a lot of work. It was please don't talk to me about anything else other than loyalty for quite a while.
Well, yeah, I think, I was quite surprised when you actually kind of completed it on time. So yeah, did well to get that done so quickly. And then changing the topic slightly. So, I mean, you were both kind of involved in selecting the vendor behind the kind of base loyalty mechanics, and you ended up going Vontavo. And I think you did quite a detailed kind of process looking at different vendors and what they could bring to the table and like where you'd need to customize, etc. So maybe both of you, kind of how have you found kind of working with them Maybe Ed, starting with you from a technical perspective and then coming back to you, Hannah, from a kind of business perspective.
Sure. And we hadn't worked with Ontavo before this project, so it was a new product for us in a space that we know quite well. So we were kind of quite excited about working with Ontavo. But I think what stood out for us as an agency, obviously, with the kind of overall Paul Smith tech stack, there's a very much I guess like best in class type mentality when selecting these products in that kind of headless composable space. So I think choosing a platform that was API first, like Ontavo, where they're not dictating anything to do with kind of design or how it kind of interacts, how customers interact with on the front end. I think that overall sort of flexibility put them in a really kind of good space in our mind of who we wanted to work with. And I think a lot of the features that were coming out of the sessions that we wanted to deliver, specifically with the stamp collecting idea, the gamification elements, points bidding, those types of things, they have a lot of that functionality within their product alongside digital wallets and good kind of reporting. So they kind of ticked a lot of boxes from a features and functionality standpoint. I think just overall the development team who were sort of implementing on the front end side really enjoyed working with it. Documentation was good. Obviously it's API first, so it was really kind of native to what they wanted to do. I don't really think we could have delivered this type of account experience specifically with a platform that was kind of more sort of widgets. And I think also that's a good nod to the central platform in that, the account's up to us to design. We're not dictated how that kind of needs to look and feel. We can do kind of whatever we want in there. So if you go through and kind of create an account on the Paul Smith site now, you'll see the breadth of which we push that account specifically for those projects. So I think all of the sort of vendors and partners involved in that, we're really pleased with.
And how did you end up integrating with the POS system? So Hannah, you briefly mentioned before that there is an integration. Like, is that just a kind of, bespoke point-to-point integration where you're kind of looking at the balance in real time? Or how did you end up going about that?
Yeah, we used a lot of the middleware through Laravel for that, those integrations to get that it needed to be so seamless between online and offline so that as soon as you spend in store, you're seeing that within my account on paulsmith.com and calling that directly from Ontavo, as well as showing the rewards on the POS as well, so that when you walk into a store, they know exactly what tier you are, how many stamps you've got to spend, that we've got this reward active at the moment, and you can see that in there. So we had one developer kind of really orchestrating that layer then, and then all the complexity that comes with returns and pending periods and things like that.
It's great that you did that for day one, because I feel like every major non-Shopify loyalty program that I've been a part of, that ends up being pushed back quite a long way. And maybe part of that just because of the POS system that's in place, or different people need to get involved. But I think it's really good that you integrated that from day one, particularly given how big retail is for you guys. But going back to Ontavo, so how have your team found it out of like a business perspective in terms of kind of setting everything up and measuring everything from like now that you're live?
Yeah, I think, the product is fantastic in terms of we're only probably just scratching the surface of the capabilities. We've definitely got ideas for the future. They have the Ontavo Academy, so we can get people kind of onboarded there internally, so that once that technical kind of quite strict onboarding piece is done, you're then there to just configure it yourself, and you can then work with them if you want to extend it. I think one of the reasons that it was really tight, to be honest, between the two that we kind of got down to, but we just really wanted someone fully immersed in loyalty. Like, we're not the experts. We really wanted to know those trends that were coming out, how we push the boundaries on the gamification to kind of pull those engagement levers with customers. So that kind of loyalty knowledge really kind of stood out when we were doing the initial kind of discovery with them.
Great. And the next question. So I've kind of ruined this question a little bit because I kind of touched on it a second ago. But in terms of the retail side, so can you maybe just talk us through kind of how integrated it is now with the retail channel, and then any further plans to kind of push, what loyalty represents for someone that walks into the store?
So currently for retail, it is a really joined up experience. Prior to loyalty kind of launching, we did a huge project internally to kind of really align our consent. So making sure that, prior to this, our store staff were blind to whether a customer was signed up to newsletters or to SMS. So we really did, like you say, kind of go back to that foundation of what kind of needs to be visible to the store staff. As well as just the education. I think that's the hardest piece, really, so that you can confidently talk to a customer about all these different factors. So that's definitely something that retail are kind of working on their language in stores of, it's not just a loyalty program, it's a club, it's there's these benefits, there's this element. If you don't want to collect stamps, don't worry, you don't have to collect stamps, kind of thing. I think in terms of like longer ideas, we know that there's couples that shop in Paul Smith, there's families that shop in Paul Smith. So how can we kind of make that experience more joined up for them is definitely in the roadmap.
One of the other objectives of the program that came out in some of those initial meetings was kind of collecting more data from customers, both in store and online. How have you kind of approached that with the program? Maybe starting with you, Ed.
I mean, I think that's definitely a key objective for most brands when embarking on loyalty. It's like one of the biggest things that brands can leverage from their program, or why they want to give away certain sort of perks and rewards, is to, get a better picture of who the customer actually is. So this was like a big part of the sort of overall kind of design implementation. So we've created, when the customer comes to create a new account, obviously there's triggers for them to do that. So, coaxing them in with specific like welcome gifts or discounts initially. And then as part of that sign up process, we took quite a bit of inspiration from the Nike account, where it's essentially just a preference center, but it's done in a really nice, engaging, intuitive, creative way. So you're asking the customer what their kind of interests are, how they like to shop, some sort of personal information around like size and fit. So we're basically building a lot more information on the customer and using the loyalty program as a way to generate more of that data. And then obviously passing over to the kind of marketing department within Paul Smith to segment all the information and do kind of really targeted sends. But the ambition then is to use that information to create a more personalized experience on the front end. Maybe we're showing only their sizes that they shop in stock. There's so much opportunity with that data, merchandising categories around the kind of interests and stuff. So yeah, huge opportunity. And I think that kind of profile quiz is, really valuable for the brand. Hannah, I don't know if you wanted to maybe talk specifically about how the marketing team is going to be kind of using that information, and maybe that, I guess, how interesting that additional data is to them.
Yeah, it's huge. At the minute, prior to loyalty, it was just men's, women's, and we know a lot of women buy from men at Paul Smith as well. So it needed to be more than just that segmentation and that department store point that we've mentioned before. So, tailoring what Paul Smith is known for is so different for so many customers. It could be that you're wearing a formal suit to work every day, but it could be that you just want a more relaxed tailoring. So really kind of asking how can we help you enjoy Paul Smith more is one of those questions. What collections are you interested in? Is it our homeware? Is it our collaborations? Down to the stores that you visit. The size question was really, really interesting for us of, even if it's just shop by sale and you're just like, I don't want to hear the noise of everything that's out of stock. We can just send, we know this, we've got this in for you. I think then it's really how we can, we feel like we send too many emails at the moment. So how can we really segment further? We make, really nice revenue from our kind of triggered campaigns and our flows. So building more on those customer journeys on how you're shopping and how we can, eventually on the homepage, you can see that this event's happening in our store in Paris. So go find out more, and we can get the sizes ready for you when you come in.
Next question, Hannah. So what has the response been from the customers? How has, kind of your customers responded to it so far? Have you had a lot of kind of engagement and interaction?
It's been really positive. For those that don't know, there is a Paul Smith fan club that we have, which from the outside, we're always kind of like dipping in and seeing what they're saying. Prior to going live, we did do focus groups. I think we're like really key to this. And we did invite some of the fan club into that just to sense check that it wasn't us just getting excited by collecting stamps, that it would kind of land well with our customers, that they kind of understood there was like nervousness. Does redeemable and special edition stamps make sense? Like, are you bothered about collecting a stamp book? And yeah, safe to say they're really enjoying it. So it's really nice to see them say like, oh, should we share how we found these stamps, or should we just keep it to ourselves, and taking screenshots and sharing? So I think there's definitely stuff we can be doing there. You know, you think of the Spotify Wrapped. There's definitely ways there. People are desperate for a physical element of these stamps, so we're working out how we can really personalize that side of things. But we have kind of gone all guns blazing with this launch. It definitely wasn't a soft launch. So we've had really good events in store with stylists talking through new collections. We've had online customers that have never been into a store going in there. So really good kind of initial stages, but it is a big program. So we have got a lot of work still to do, I think, now on educating on the different elements and improving that retail experience. So, you know, you can tap in like Soho House style, so that you know you're there, and you can kind of be a bit more subtle if you're perhaps one of our smithies compared to a newcomer. So yeah, I'm really pleased with how it's landed. We just need to turn the volume up now.
Lovely. And then Ed, from your side, you've obviously been super involved across everything, and then owned a lot of the technical side. Are there any learnings, I guess, from your team, or maybe things you might have done differently given kind of, I guess, the scale of the rollout and, how much you've kind of done to architect things of a certain way?
I think sort of going into it with a really open mind and knowing that that things can sort of shift and evolve over that. I mean, it was a year-long project, really. And then as Hannah was mentioning, you know, post-live, it's not, you know, it's still an ongoing project. So it's got its own roadmap specifically. So I think just understanding the size of everything, and, you know, there's nothing worse than like biggest fear outside of people understanding redeemables versus collectibles was launching the program and then it just like crickets, nothing happening on it. I think they've got this amazing framework now to like take it in whatever direction they want, and push it as far as it can go. So I think, how it's all turned out, I couldn't be happier, really. And I think the initial findings has been great. There's still so much more to turn on in terms of a lot of the kind of automations and flows, a lot of the kind of in-store activity. We're already kind of working on making the program more visible across the site because, you know, people got their own internal ad blockers on when they're on e-com stores. Now it's like really difficult to get the kind of right messaging across. So, you know, we're kind of re-looking at working some of those flows. So I think the most important takeaway for us is that, yeah, it's kind of, phases and iterations, and kind of even though we've launched, there's still a lot more to do.
Yeah, makes sense. And then final question, Hannah. You've obviously done so much already, and it sounds like both of you are like really looking forward to kind of rolling out some of the kind of features you're planning on building into the program. But I guess like what are some of the bigger things you're still looking at doing to kind of, continue to take the program to the next level?
Yeah, we have, you know, as a legacy company or a heritage company, should I say, we've got the complexity of like franchise. So we need to kind of onboard our franchise customers because to a customer, they'd still Paul Smith. So that operates in the kind of our Asian market a lot more at the moment. So we're desperate to kind of bring those involved. Wholesale as well is a huge part of our business. And we really want to work with our wholesale partners, and not in a kind of, okay, we want to kind of take them back into kind of direct, but how can we work with those that they get part of that Paul Smith world to buy Paul Smith from them again, not just another brand. So that's definitely something we're kind of working with now with our wholesale side of the business. The kind of family element, definitely push notifications, is a whole new channel for us that we've got to kind of weave in there. So yeah, the roadmap is long, and quickly being asked to kind of, you know, double stamp days, things like that, and pushing our buying and merch to think about new stamps when they're working with partners and things like that. So it's busy. It's busy.
Great. Well, I mean, I think personally, I would consider this to be, industry leading. I think, you know, Paul Smith is perfectly placed as well to do so much cool stuff within the program, and you've obviously got so much of that already built in. But yeah, and I found it really interesting today, kind of listening to you both talk about where it's going. Just before I kind of close the episode off, if people wanted to kind of ask you any questions on the program or get in touch with you, Ed, in terms of working with you on these kind of projects, how would people go about doing that? Maybe starting with you, Hannah.
More than happy for anyone to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I know, like, leading up to this, especially in the last couple of years, of how to position a loyalty program for a premium brand is really difficult. So yeah, more than happy to talk about my experience. Hannah Bennett at LinkedIn.
And then you, Ed?
Yeah, we've actually got a Collectors Club launch party coming up on the 19th of November. So if anyone is interested in coming to find out more about the program, pop some champagne and have a nice evening, then please reach out. Yeah, and yeah, I'm available on LinkedIn. That's probably the best channel to get a hold of me.
Lovely. Well, yeah, thanks so much for joining. And then, yeah, thanks everyone for listening. As always, please follow us and subscribe on wherever you're listening. And then, yeah, I'll be back with James again next week. And yeah, as always, feel free to shoot us any questions as well.
You're listening to the Inside Commerce podcast hosted by experienced consultants James Gerd and Paul Rogers. Inside Commerce is your fast track to digital knowledge, featuring interviews with leading e-commerce retailers, industry thought leaders, and the C-suite of key tech companies to explore the latest in digital strategy, customer experience, and tech. Discover what the latest trends really mean and get practical advice based on experience to help fine-tune your e-com strategy and tech stack. Follow us on LinkedIn and reach out to James or Paul if you'd like to discuss an e-commerce project. We hope you enjoy the latest episode.